Now for tonight, as per usual, we want to make sure we're in a comfortable seated position. So if you need to adjust your space so that you can sit in a very upright posture, feel free to go ahead and do that. And also maybe sitting on something soft, sitting on a cushion. Also, I'm going to ask please that you have a notebook or a pen and paper, or on your computer, feel free to just open up a Word document or a note page, something that you can jot down ideas. We're going to start with our centering meditation practice. And so for this, I'm just going to ask you, please place your hands on your lap and close your eyes. If you prefer to turn off your camera, you can certainly do that. For our centering, we start by just feeling the lowest part of our body, feeling our anchoring to the ground beneath us, however that presents for you. And then from your foundation, aligning your spine in its optimal neutral position. So not hunched forward, not arched back, but an easy neutral position where your ears are aligned over the center of your shoulders. And it's relatively easy to maintain this upright posture with a minimal amount of physical effort. And we're not trying to control the breath, but just observing how you're breathing right now. And at this moment in our practice, we set the intention to press pause on our day. And everything leading up to this moment, no matter how relaxing or chaotic, we just put that on the back burner. And for the next 50 minutes or so, we commit our full energy and attention to this breath and meditation practice. Now starting to slow down the breath a little bit. With this exhale, drop your shoulders away from your ears. And now consciously changing the breath to make the length of the inhale and the length of the exhale the same. Just 2 more cycles of breath. Dropping your attention into this moment. No other concerns. Beautiful. And now taking your palms to touch in front of you and rubbing them to create warmth. And placing your warm palms over your closed eyes. 3 times together, we'll inhale deeply and exhale with an audible sigh. Starting by emptying the lungs and inhaling. Exhale. Inhaling. Exhale. And last time, in and exhale. drawing your palms away from your eyes and opening your eyes so that we start this practice from a calm but alert state of consciousness. So last week, we went over how to breathe with the abdomen, deep diaphragmatic breath. And then our meditation practice was all about focusing on sensations in the body. So for tonight, we're going to go a little bit higher. So the breath work that we're doing from last week, this week, and then progressing into next week is the foundation of what's called the 3-part yogic breath, the full yogic breath, the basic mechanics of how we want to achieve optimal ventilation efficiency. So we worked on breathing with the belly. And for anyone who didn't join, I'm just going to recap. Going into profile here and show my belly. So abdominal breathing. The goal is, as I inhale, I'm going to let the belly expand forward. And with my exhale, I'm going to allow the belly to contract back towards the spine. And what happens is when we breathe this way, with allowing the belly to move forward, we make room for the diaphragm to contract, and that allows the lungs to expand all the way down into the bottom of the thoracic cavity. So first thing that happens on the inhale, the belly expands. On the exhale, the belly contracts. That's abdominal breathing. For tonight, what we're going to focus on more is thoracic breathing. So I'm just going to move this back, move all of this, back a little bit so that you can see my rib cage. So belly breath. Then the second thing that happens is I want to breathe laterally. So this may initially seem like a weird thing to do. And where I first learned how to do this actually is when I was dancing and I was in ballet. In ballet, you're balancing on such a tiny base of support that any extra movement, any unnecessary movement in your body is going to throw your balance. So ballet dancers do not breathe abdominally as much as they breathe laterally in the rib cage. So the way that we can learn how to do this, similar to how we did our belly breathing, where we placed the hand on the belly so we could actually feel with the inhale, the belly expanding forward, and with the exhale, the belly contracting backwards. Same idea, but this time we're going to put the hands around the lower part of the rib cage. And you'll just notice breathing here in a natural, relaxed fashion, you'll feel your ribs moving. And depending on how you're breathing, if you're breathing kind of high and shallow right now, they might not expand that much. If you're really relaxed and mellow and just sort of letting it happen, you will notice actually that big range of motion. I think it was in week 1 or week 2, I showed a video of how the rib cage actually moves. It's like each individual rib is a bucket handle and it moves on this arced trajectory. And with your hands here, you'll feel that. You'll feel the rib cage move laterally and up. So that will be our focus for tonight's breath practice. So first, please, centering yourself, placing your hands on the lower part of your rib cage and closing your eyes. And with your eyes closed, not trying to change the pacing of the breath or the ratio, just getting a baseline measurement of how much your rib cage moves. Notice if you can feel it not only moving laterally, but forward and backwards as well, anteriorly and posteriorly. Now you'll notice the belly is going to move as well, and probably also the clavicle, your collarbones are going to lift a little bit. That's okay. Right now, we just want to draw our attention to the movement of the rib cage. That's good. And keeping your eyes closed, now I'd like you to change the rhythm of the breath. So we're deliberately aiming to inhale for whatever your maximum comfortable breath count is, and then exhaling for the same. So, for example, if your maximum comfortable inhale count is 1, 2, 3, 4, your exhale will also be 1, 2, 3, 4. Whatever this count is for you. Good, and we'll open the eyes, taking the hands off of the rib cage and just pausing for a moment. So that is a baseline. Now you know what it feels like for your rib cage to move before you've done any sort of stretching, before you've consciously attempted to change the breath. So now we're going to do a little bit of a stretch, and we're going to do that same breath practice again. The muscles that we're going to be aiming to stretch, like last time, will be mostly muscles in the neck and shoulders, and a little bit the intercostals. The intercostal muscles are actually the muscles that are woven all the way through the rib cage, and they facilitate the movement of the ribs. You can have tightness in the intercostals that can actually prevent the ribs from moving properly. And for anyone who's ever bruised a rib or cracked a rib, you have noticed for sure what happens when those intercostal muscles contract and pull on that injured rib. It can be really sore. So let's do a few stretches. First of all, taking your hand to either left or right ear, doesn't matter. And you're not pulling, but you're just gently guiding your ear down towards your shoulder. At the same time, taking your opposite hand, reaching it towards the floor or away from you until you feel a stretch in the side of the neck. And we all have different ranges of motion and different functional capacity in our joints. And so it doesn't matter how deep you go into this. Whatever your end range is, that's your stretch. There's a huge, how can I say it? In the world of yoga, there's an issue where advanced yoga teachers, even teachers who've been practicing for a long time, fixate on trying to look like another yoga teacher. We'll come inhale, back to center, and exhale, opposite side. And you may notice this side feels different, and that's totally okay. So yoga teachers can start to fixate on how they look. This happens a lot with ski instructors as well. You start to really observe the form rather than observing the function. In the world of skiing, when we fixate on form or how the body looks, we can end up totally destroying the function because no two bodies are the same, and therefore no two bodies will have the same movement patterns. So too in yoga, the temptation is that you can fall into thinking, oh, I need to stretch my neck this amount, otherwise I'm not doing it right. In yoga, our function is observing the stretch. Am I getting a stretch in the place I'm looking for it? That's the only thing that's relevant. And inhaling, coming to center. Now turning your nose in line with one of your knees. Whichever knee that is, the same hand will come to the back of the head. And you're gently drawing your chin towards that knee as the opposite hand reaches behind you and fingertips either press into the floor or just extend into space. And now the function of this stretch is we want to feel it somewhere in the diagonal back side of the neck. Moving to your capacity. Allowing the breath to be slow. And then coming out of that pose to center, nose pointing towards the opposite knee, that hand comes to the back of the head, and you draw your chin down. There's another huge temptation among yoga teachers and advanced yoga practitioners to go to the end range, to go as far as you can into the pose. And this actually is totally counterproductive, because really the goal of the pose is to reconnect the body with the mind. And we can't do that by forcing it. We simply create a 60 or 70% version of the pose, and we allow the breath to move us into whatever our personal, comfortable end range is. Coming out of the pose back to center. So now we'll work a little bit on the intercostals, taking your hands overhead and interlacing index finger and thumb around your wrist, and then just dropping to one side until you feel a stretch coming into the armpit all the way down your side body. And then inhaling up through center, same thing, opposite side. Inhale, lengthen. As you exhale, tilt. And just encourage a stretch somewhere in the outer arm and down into the rib cage. And inhaling up through center. Next is going to be a rotational pose. We're going to do a twist, taking one hand to the opposite knee. The other hand is going to come behind you. Inhale, lengthen, and then to your capacity, draw your shoulder back as you create whatever rotation in your spine is possible and appropriate for you. And maybe that's just turning your head. In this posture, you may notice with each exhale, the muscles will relax and you'll just naturally start to twist a little more. We don't need to force it, only if it's happening naturally. And empty the lungs. Inhale back through center. Last one, we're going to do the same twist, but to the opposite side. So a hand on thigh or knee, drawing your shoulder back. Inhale, lengthen the spine, and exhale, twist. Now, if you're someone who's super bendy, that can be a great advantage in yoga, but also it can be something that you focus on more than stability. So empty the lungs, inhale, coming back through center. So by stability, that's referring back to your base of support. When you're doing your rotational poses, making sure that you're not cranking yourself in such a way that you come off of that balanced base of support. So with those stretches done, now we're going to go back to feeling the rib cage moving and just noticing if it's at all different. So please close your eyes. And with your hands on your low ribs, create a relaxed breath. And then start to change the pacing so that whatever your comfortable max inhale is, match your exhale to that for an even ratio 1-to-1. Inhale, exhale, breath. And just a couple more cycles of breath. And then opening the eyes. So if anyone's finding that's not working well, feel free to just type into the chat, okay, that's not working, or you can unmute if you have any questions. I want to just talk a little bit about what this thoracic breath or chest breathing is doing to the autonomic nervous system. So we've discussed a few times, the autonomic nervous system is like a dial, and there's basically two far ends. You've got full fight or flight, and then you've got rest and digest. Abdominal breathing is correlated with rest and digest. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system response. But chest breathing can actually activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight side of things. So if you're someone who can get anxious sometimes, probably you'll notice that your breath naturally goes high into the chest when you're feeling anxiety. And because we know these are reciprocal actions, meaning breath can influence the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system also influences breath. Please just be aware as we do this next round where we're just focusing on rib breathing or chest breathing, you might feel a little bit of fight or flight kicking in. And that's totally okay, because we're going to follow that up right away with adding the belly to the chest breath, and then that will bring us right back down. So last round of just rib cage breathing now. Also, for athletes, when you're doing something that requires the core to be really tight, like when you're right in the arc of a really high speed turn, you're laid all the way over, there's a massive amount of ground reactive force pushing you like an accordion, top of the body down to the bottom of the body. Your abdomen is going to be so tight that it's not going to be possible to take a big belly breath. That's not an appropriate time to be trying to breathe with your belly. your chest is naturally going to take over. And that makes sense. Chest breathing, fight or flight, super high speed laid over turn with lots of ground reactive force. That's appropriate. So, what you might feel here might feel a little bit like when you're skiing super fast. So, we can think of it that way. So, last round, we're going to deliberately not move the belly, and we're just going to breathe with the ribs. So, closing your eyes, empty the lungs, create a little bit of engagement of your lower abdomen, so tightening those muscles, and then breathing just with your ribs. And about 4 more cycles of breath. And last one. And then relax. Just return to your normal breath. So I actually feel a little lightheaded from that. I'm not sure if anyone else does. And it's difficult. I remember when I was in my ballet training and my teacher told me I had to do that. At first, I thought I was going to pass out. But with training, eventually, I actually could get enough movement in my rib cage that I could breathe deeply. And also, I learned how to time the breath with my movement, which we're going to talk about further on in the program. Learning how to time when we take an abdominal breath versus a chest breath to match the demands of the situation, be it on snow or just in general life. So now I want to teach you how these things go together. How does belly breathing and chest breathing go together? Well, in our 3-part yogic breath, we would breathe inhaling belly first, then ribs, and then the last part, which we're going to practice next week, is we would lift the clavicle. On the exhale, everything reverses. The clavicle will drop, the ribs will pull in, the belly will draw in. For our purposes tonight, as we inhale, it'll be belly, ribs. On the exhale, it will be ribs, belly. And so to do this practice, we'll have one hand on the belly and the other hand is going to be on the rib cage. Now you may find as you do this practice, at first, it's going to be a little like patting the head, rubbing the tummy. It's going to be a coordination thing. We're going to do it for a few minutes to give you time to get these two movements happening in sync. So again, inhale is going to be belly, ribs. Exhale is going to be ribs, belly. So please close your eyes. And then all together, we're going to empty the lungs. To inhale, belly, ribs. Exhale, ribs draw in, belly pulls back. Inhale, belly out, ribs lift. Exhale, ribs draw down, belly pulls in. Inhale, belly, ribs. Exhale, ribs, belly. Now continuing, using your own unique counting to guide your breath. And when you've got the hang of it, you can take your hands and just place them back in your lap. But please continue this two-part yogic breath. And just a few more cycles of breath. And then we release this breath practice. And just open your eyes and take a moment to come back. Just your normal breath rhythm. Maybe taking a little water. So did anyone notice breathing just with your rib cage felt differently than breathing belly and rib cage? And if so, how did it feel different? Feel free to throw it in the chat or unmute. But for everybody, regardless if you want to share that, please put that in your journal. Because from this class moving forward, I'm going to ask you to take just a few notes about your experience with the breath in the meditation practice. And then at the end of our 12-week program, you'll have a history. You'll be able to observe things like how long your breath is, how many counts, what your comfortable max inhale is, things like that. So we want to start to take a bit of history. So either mentioning if you want to do so, or otherwise just putting it in your journal. I can tell you for myself, when I breathe just with the rib cage, there's definitely a momentary sensation of panic because with just the ribs expanding, I feel like I can't get a full deep breath. Sort of agitated with the ribs only, Ronan said. Yeah, definitely similar for myself. And you can notice now, maybe if you in your just normal day-to-day life find yourself feeling agitated in that same way, pause and observe, am I only breathing with my rib cage right now? And then maybe experiment adding a bit of abdominal breathing to the mix. And you might start to notice that, whoa, actually I was just breathing really tight, and that's why I feel that agitation or that anxiety. Definitely different and difficult, Anya says. Felt restricted, but noticed that shifting my weight, it felt relaxing. That's interesting. Cool observation, Brenda. And then difficult to coordinate, Anya is saying. Yes, for sure. And in the beginning, you're like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing with my belly and my ribs. With practice, it'll start to become your new norm. And Ronan also says, also had difficulty exhaling ribs first. The body wanted to breathe in abdomen and then ribs, and then exhale abdomen, then ribs. Yes. definitely it will take a little bit of time. Um, an, an analogy or a visualization that I use for this one is, imagine you have a pitcher of water, just any vessel, and you're going to fill it with water. As you're filling it, it's going to fill from the bottom to the top. And then when you go to empty it, when you go to pour it out, it's going to empty from the top to the bottom. You can kind of think of it like that. Now, the reason that it feels awkward is we're not used to breathing like this. We did when we were babies, but life has had an influence on how we breathe, and it will take a little time. But thank you so much for sharing those observations. So now we're going to shift over from breath into the meditation focus for tonight, which is observing your thoughts. Now, for this, we're going to find, first of all, that even as you're trying to pay attention to your thoughts, very possibly you'll kind of drift away and you'll sort of lose your sense of self. You'll get caught up in one of those thoughts, and then you might totally forget the exercise. And so, what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to use these chimes. These are Tibetan tabatas, and they make a little noise like so. So every minute, I'm going to be hitting these just to remind you, okay, I'm supposed to be paying attention to my thoughts. So it's worth repeating. In our yoga practice, one of the absolutely essential prerequisites is committing to non-judgment. You're going to find when you start to pay attention to your thoughts that there are going to be a ton of thoughts, and that you may want to try and kind of quiet it all down. But resist that temptation, please, and just welcome any thoughts as they arise. Simply observe them. And by observing the thoughts, you might notice they change. Sort of like if you happen to have a lucid dream, if anyone is someone who lucid dreams, you become consciously aware that you're dreaming while you're in the dream. You'll notice that that act of observing changes the scene. So too in this type of meditation. So simply coming back into your comfortable seat, and the goal is going to be just to pay attention to thoughts as they come into your awareness. With eyes closed, we start. And again, if your mind has wandered or become caught up, simply come back to paying attention to this thought. And now bringing your attention back into the room by opening your eyes. Okay, so right while it's fresh in mind, I'd like you please to take a moment to jot down in your journal or on a piece of paper what thoughts you noticed and anything that came up. It could be a thought about a feeling. It could be I'm thinking about, oh, I'm hungry, or I have an itchy elbow, or I hear something going on outside in my room. And jot down as much as you can remember, please. So once you have some things written down, just have a look and see if you see any patterns. Are there a combination of thoughts that came up that are related in some way? Okay, so looking at your list of thoughts that came up, a couple questions for you. Okay, oh, I shouldn't have even mentioned. Brian says, I can't hear my dog. Great. Thinking about what was happening in between when I would hit the tabatas, when I would ring the chime there. Did you find that you got carried away and that you sort of lost yourself in a thought in between the time, between the two ringing of the tabatas? Yes, very much so. That's really normal. You'll be paying attention to a thought, and then it's almost like it hooks you. Somehow it hooks your conscious awareness and pulls you down this rabbit hole of thought. That's really, really normal. And it's through the practice of meditation that you will eventually be able to extend the period of time between those chimes. That was about a minute that I was hitting the tabatas. And if you found you got pulled away in just a minute's time, with practice, you might find you could go 5 minutes and you still are focused on thoughts as they arise. And the mind was flying around from random thought to thought. Yeah, definitely a common experience, Rowan. And did anyone find that they got frustrated with themselves? That you were like, I want to be able to just pay attention to what's happening right now, but I keep getting pulled into this hearing my dog breathing or an itch on my foot. I keep getting distracted. Did anyone find that happening? And if so, what's interesting about that is that in and of itself is a thought. Anya says she kind of felt like there wasn't much to pay attention to. Okay, so maybe you're actually a really good meditator, Anya. You were just able to be in a really quiet headspace. Nothing wrong with that. Accidental pro, Rowan says. She might be really good at it. Might not be an accident at all. Brian says, I got overwhelmingly tired and overwhelmingly sleepy. For sure, that can happen. If you're really tired and you're listening to my melodic yoga voice, certainly that could make you kind of drop into fatigue. So when it comes to frustration or observations like, oh gosh, I'm feeling tired, the mere observation of feeling tired in and of itself is a thought. And with practice, as a skilled meditator, you'll start to notice, oh, okay, I'm thinking about feeling tired right now. And it's different layers. The sensation itself, the awareness of the sensation, the thought about the sensation, and it goes on and on and on. So thank you so much for indulging me in that. As always, I want to cycle back and really make the point clear about why this practice tonight relates to what you're attempting to do on snow. We talked a little bit about the gap between a stimulus and response. We have a stimulus in our environment. When we're skiing, and of course, it could be you hit a bump, it throws you in the back seat, and then you have this automatic visceral reaction like, I need to get forward, I need to get back on my line. All kinds of thoughts and feelings can go along with that sensation. But if the sensation results in an action, an output that's not the desired one, that's an indication that you're firing on instinct. Being able to increase the gap means we're able to become so sensitive to sensations and thoughts that we can actually disconnect ourselves from them a little bit. And then when we have a stimulus, we have that momentary fraction of a second gap where we can become actors instead of instinctively acting. And that's really the goal for athletes. We want to refine our attention to the point where we can point it where we want it to go. And we want to strengthen the muscle of being able to hold our attention without judgment, so that we can increase that gap and then be the masters of our destiny.